Well, we're in the middle of a series that we're simply calling church. And I know there are a lot of images that come into our minds when we hear that word. It's maybe a tall steeple. Maybe it's a red brick building. Maybe it's rows of pews facing a pipe organ attached to the wall. A lot of us have memories about church growing up. And we've got 2 more weeks together without a church building. And while we're really excited about the building that we're building, there's something really important that I don't want us to forget. The church is not about the building. It never has been. It never should be. At its core, church is the people. More specifically, it's the people who are gathered and united around Jesus. It's the people who are inhabited by God's Spirit. It's the people who are joining Jesus in his mission to reach and love and serve the world. Church isn't a building. Church isn't a place you go. We, even right now gathering online, we are the church. I don't know about you if you're around in this area, but I've been feeling a little sad about these last few weeks that we're going to be meeting as a church at the school before we have a building. It's a little foggy and fuzzy and doesn't seem real. In our building, we've had furniture and chairs delivered this week, and we're taking more and more equipment over to the building every day, and the clock is ticking. But here's what I know. Everything that's made the Village Church over the past 5 years is going with us no matter where we go, because you are the church, right? If somebody asks you, where do you go to church? You can say back, wherever we go together is the church. Now, I know that I've spoken before about the fact that my family moved to Spring Hill, Tennessee in the summer of 1990 when I was headed into middle school. And Spring Hill at that time was a small farming town of about 800 people, believe it or not. My family moved there with the first big wave of people who were coming in to work at the brand new GM plant in Spring Hill. Neither of my parents worked there, but we just kind of moved the same year as the other people who did. Now, maybe you've heard me tell the story of how on my very first day of school in Tennessee, within the first 5 minutes of class, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and they said, "Hey boy, are you a Yankee?" Now, I had no idea what that was. I looked at him, I was kind of confused. And he repeated himself, "Are you a Yankee? Are you from the North?" And I was really excited and I said, "Oh yeah, my family and I just moved here from Illinois." And with all the seriousness in the world, he looked at me and he said, "It's a sin to be a Yankee." I think that's what they call Southern hospitality. I don't know. Well, I had another memory this week of another story that happened to me that same year, that same first semester. And honestly, I don't think I've ever told anyone this story before. Now, I know you're going to be shocked by this, but I wasn't what anybody would consider cool or popular. I really didn't have any friends, especially in the first semester of that year. It was kind of a rough transition in. And there was a lot of tension that year between the established people in Spring Hill and the wave of new people who'd moved in. A lot of tension in that first semester. And somewhere along the way, a group of the popular guys thought it might be fun to try to stage a fight between someone who was new and someone who'd grown up there. And apparently they thought that I'd be a good candidate to be the new person in that scenario. And so this group of guys, this kind of popular guys, they started telling me a bunch of lies and hearsay and half-truths about this other kid named Derek. Now, interestingly, Derek and his family were part of the church that my family and I had started attending. And so they started telling me about what he was saying about me, what he was saying about my mom, what he was saying about all Yankees everywhere, that he was saying it was really stupid that Illinois has a silent S at the end of it, and everybody from Illinois must be stupid because they don't pronounce the S at the end. Just, I mean, all kinds of random stuff. And they told me that he wanted to fight me in the boys' bathroom between math and social studies. Now, I never actually heard him say any of those things myself. So I think I kind of ignored it at first, but they just kept going and they kept egging me on and they wouldn't leave me alone about it. And something about it made me think in my 11-year-old brain that maybe if I got in a fight with this kid that I barely knew, that maybe I could earn their respect, or maybe they'd start to include me, or maybe they'd be my friends or whatever. Well, meanwhile, and I didn't know about this, they were also going to Derek and they were telling him that I was talking trash about him, that I was saying things about his mom, that I was saying things about all the people in the South, and that I wanted to fight him in the bathroom between math and social studies. And I wish I could say that, in all of my exemplary 11-year-old rationality, I figured out what was happening. And I went to Derek directly and we reconciled and we embraced in the hallway. And it was a beautiful moment of peace and reconciliation. And he's my very best friend to this day. I wish I could say that. And honestly, I'm pretty ashamed to admit that when math ended, I was ushered into the bathroom by a group of the boys. And when I stepped in there, Derek was waiting for me with another group. And they surrounded us in the bathroom, and just got a couple memories of it. The group, they pushed Derek from behind forward, and he came up to me and he shoved me, and I kind of staggered backwards. And I remember I clenched my fist, I reared back, I swung a right hook at his nose with all of my might, and I missed by about 3 feet. So then we proceeded to engage in an intense battle of standing there and looking at each other for a few more seconds until a kid who was the lookout — you always have to have a lookout, by the way — he came in and he said a teacher was coming, and we all dispersed out of the bathroom. And I think we were both scared and embarrassed enough by our lack of combat skills that we never talked about it again. And this week, as I've remembered that story, honestly, I felt a lot of shame about the fact that I was ready to clock a kid who was part of my church in the nose with all of my might because of a bunch of hearsay and lies and half-truths. What makes me sad about it, and I think the reason this memory flooded my mind this week, is that it feels like a commentary on the state of our culture right now. I mean, it feels like right now in our culture, we've got people all over the place, rational people, who are willing to just pounce, to completely tear each other apart based on hearsay and lies and half-truths, right? It feels like the fabric of our society is being torn in two. It feels like churches are being torn in two, and people are willing to fight at the drop of a hat. And isn't it exciting that in a time like this, in a climate like this, that Thanksgiving is only about a week and a half away? I mean, nothing screams unity like a table filled with extended family, am I right? I'd bet that more than a couple of us are already feeling anxious about sitting at the table with extended family and praying to God that this topic doesn't come up or that topic doesn't come up. Now, it used to be that there were some major landmine topics that you knew you shouldn't talk about unless you wanted conflict. And as a pastor, I knew that I needed to really do my homework on those topics. I needed to make sure I knew what I was talking about at those topics. I needed to try to navigate them eloquently, but now it feels like every topic is a landmine. Every word is scrutinized, and it's taking more and more and more energy to try to simply hold people together. The Apostle Paul wrote a letter to a church in Ephesus who was trying to navigate the same kind of culture. And I think the climate that we're living in right now and trying to figure out how to navigate right now makes these words from Ephesians chapter 4 as important as they've ever been. This is Ephesians chapter 4. You can turn there starting in verse 4. Here's what Paul says, or verse 1. As a prisoner for the Lord, then. Paul is writing these words from a prison cell. He's been locked up in a prison cell because of his faith. And here's what he says. As a prisoner for the Lord, then, listen to this. I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. Let me read verse 3 again, because I think it's the heart of this passage. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. 2 weeks ago on Halloween, we said that the church is the people who put on Jesus, who dress like Jesus for the world. Last week, we said that the church is the people who've come before us, who've laid a foundation for us that we can build on moving forward. And today, here's what I want to say. I want to say that the church is the people who are united by Jesus. The church is the people who are united by Jesus. It's the people who make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Right? In a world of division and divisiveness, in a world where people are willing to tear each other apart at the drop of a hat, Paul and the authors of the New Testament give us a pathway to unity. Now, 3 things that I want to point out, 3 things for us to know about unity. The first is this: unity requires humility. Paul says, be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love. There's one phrase, 4 words, that could be a game changer for followers of Jesus who are trying to display humility. They are really hard to say, but I think we need to practice them. Are you ready? Are you ready for these 4 words? Here they are. I might be wrong. It hurts to say those words, right? But those words are a game changer. If you're with somebody right now, say those words. Look at somebody and say, I might be wrong. But you might want to say, but I've done my research. But I've got a degree in this. But I've looked it up on the internet. But I heard it on my news channel of choice. But my brother-in-law shared it in a Facebook post and he only shares the truth. No. I might be wrong. 4 of the most important and powerful words you can say. What would it look like to practice those words this week? What would it look like to preface your posts with those words? Humility is definitely not the way of the world right now. But I heard somebody say something really interesting this week that I've never really thought of before. He said, if you want to make a mark on something, you have to have something that's a different substance than what you're making a mark on. So if you want to make a mark on the world, you have to use something different than what the world uses. So I'm just wondering what it would look like for us to try those words this week and see what happens. I might be wrong, right? What if we could mark a divided and divisive world with humility? Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. If we want to find a pathway to unity, the first thing we need to know is that unity requires humility. The second thing we need to know, and I think this is important, is that unity is not uniformity. And this is typically where we get this all wrong about unity. We think that in order to have unity that we have to all talk the same way and think the same way and vote the same way. But the picture of unity in the New Testament is diversity. One of the marks of the early church was its radical diversity, different backgrounds, different socioeconomic statuses, different races and ethnicities and nationalities. You had rich and poor and male and female, black, brown, white, conservative, liberal, all united together around Jesus. That was the beauty and the power and the distinction of the early church from the surrounding culture, that people were able to come together despite their differences. Now listen, I don't want anybody to freak out right now. But listening to this right now, there are some Democrats. And Democrats, listen, don't turn this off. But right now on your feed, there might be somebody who voted for the Republican candidate in last year's election. Listen, it's simply not possible for all of us to fully agree on everything. And if we had to categorize ourselves based just on one word or one topic, families would be divided, marriages would be divided, churches would be divided. And so what are we here for? What unites us? The New Testament says Jesus, right? The point is Jesus, giving our lives to Jesus, following Jesus, uniting around Jesus. Paul goes on to say there is one body and one spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. There is one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. And if Paul were here with us today, right, he might say, there's one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all, and it's not me, and it's not you. And it's not Rachel Maddow or Tucker Carlson or whoever you listen to for hours every week. It's not a political party. It's not what somebody said on your Facebook feed, even though I'm sure they did a whole bunch of research. There is one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all, and it's Jesus. Our unity is found only in Jesus, right? You actually see this play out beautifully in the very first disciples of Jesus. It's powerful. Jesus invited an original group of 12 people to follow him. 2 of those 12 were Matthew the tax collector and Simon the zealot. Just some background on them. Matthew was a tax collector. Simon hated tax collectors. Matthew collected money for the Romans. Simon was a rebel against the Romans. Matthew had a lot of money. Matthew was rich. Simon was probably lower class. Matthew lived to make money by overcharging people like Simon on their taxes, and Simon lived to kill people like Matthew. And they were both part of the original small group that Jesus led. How in the world were they able to do that? Well, that leads to the final thing that we need to know about unity. The third thing that I think we need to know is that unity follows surrender. 7 years ago last month, October of 2014, before the Village was a reality, when it was just kind of this emerging vision in my heart and Amanda's heart, she and I went out to California to attend a conference about church planting to just try to discern if we were actually crazy enough to leave behind what we'd known for a decade and kind of step out into the unknown to start a new church. In reality, that was back when I was still naive about the world and how it worked. And I was kind of idealistic about what was possible, what might be possible in the church and in the community. And so we found where the conference was located. We walked in, we found our seats for the first session. The band started singing the first song. And I remember just in this moment, in the chorus of the song, just kind of being overcome and overwhelmed by the Holy Spirit. And I sat down and I pulled out my journal and I began to write, and my pen was moving faster than my brain. And in that moment, as I was writing, I remembered this beautiful picture that's painted in the book of Revelation, chapter 7. The Apostle John, one of the original 12 disciples, he has this vision and he writes about it. And in this vision, he's been taken into heaven and he's kind of in the throne room of God. And here's how he describes it. After this, I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, every tribe, every people and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and they were holding palm branches in their hands, and they cried out in a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." Verse 11 says, all the angels were standing around the throne and around the elders and all the living creatures there, and they fell down on their faces before the throne of God, and they worshiped God, saying, "Amen. Praise and glory and wisdom and thanks and honor and power and strength be to our God forever and ever. Amen." Right? Who was there in John's vision? Was it just one type of people or one group of people? No. John's vision is of a great multitude of people that no one could count, from every nation, every tribe, every people, every language, standing before the throne of God. And what are they wearing? They're wearing white robes. Now, white symbolizes several things, but one of them is surrender. This is a multitude of people from every nation, every tribe, every people, every language, who have surrendered their lives to Jesus. And that is the thing that unites them, right? Their unity doesn't come from their background. It doesn't come from their language. It doesn't come from their nationality. It doesn't come from the color of their skin. It doesn't come from their political allegiance. It doesn't come from their experience in life. It doesn't come from their opinion on every topic. Their unity comes from their surrender to Jesus. And so I would just ask you, what do you need to surrender in order to be united with Jesus? What do you need to lay aside in order to give your full allegiance to Jesus? In a couple of weeks, we're about to move into a building that sits at the nexus, the meeting point of a lot of different things, different communities, different counties, different economic realities, different political majorities, different people with different opinions on a whole host of topics and issues. And I think I'm naive enough to believe that it's still possible for people with a vast amount of differences to lay all of that down, to surrender, and to be united by Jesus. I'd go a step further and say that not only do I think it's possible, I think it's necessary. I think the world needs the church to be the church now more than ever. Listen, there's a lost and hurting and broken and divided and divisive world all around us. Lots of people who are like a powder keg, and they are ready to explode, and they're being fueled by lies and hearsay and half-truths, and they need to see that something different is possible. They need to see glimpses of the goodness of God, and I believe their best hope is us, the church, people who are united by Jesus. And here's the thing. They're not going to be driving up and looking at our building to see that. They're going to be looking at you. They're going to be looking at the people that they work with, the people that they go to school with, the people in their family who claim to be followers of Jesus. Is there something different about us? Is there something special about us? Is there something magnetic about us? That's what they're looking to see. As a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all.